You've come to the right place if you're looking to create, launch, and scale a high-value online training program. I'm your guide, Chris Badgett. I'm the co-founder of LifterLMS, the most powerful learning management system for WordPress. Stay to the end. I've got something special for you. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMS Cast. I'm joined by a special guest and friend I've known around the internet for a long time. I don't know how long, maybe 8 years, something like that. I remember I first shook Remkus de Vries' hand in St. Louis. That's when I first met you in person, I think. I
Yeah,
could be wrong.
correct. Yeah.
But Remkus is a WordPress performance expert. He's working on some training, a course about that. He also has a tool to help with that called Scan Fully. So go check out scanfully.com. Also, Remkus has one of the few newsletters that I moved to my primary inbox. It's called Within WordPress, within WP.com. If you want to keep tabs on what's going on in WordPress, it's a great newsletter. We're going to get into all that, but first, welcome to the show, Remkus. And I pronounced it wrong. It's de Vries.
It is.
so you could feel free to correct me if I mess up again, but welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Happy to be here. Yeah, I think
Well,
the first time is probably more than a decade ago. Because
okay.
we're 2025, and in 2015, I was aware of you already. I know that for a fact.
One of the things about that, I remember at that WordCamp, I took my brother with me, and it was the first time that I noticed, like when I first started going to some events, I didn't really know a lot of people. And then all of a sudden, I started realizing that creating content, social media, getting out there, there's people watching and listening. It's just a pro tip to get out from behind the computer, get out in the world, share yourself publicly. But maybe let's start there. You share your personal life, for example, Remkus, and correct me if I'm using the wrong term here. I know it's not bodybuilding. He's a strong man.
Yep.
So one of the things I like about Remkus is you can check out social media. You'll find stuff about performance and WordPress, but you'll also see him lifting and throwing and carrying heavy things. So you
Never
put
been
your whole
better.
self out there. Tell
Yeah.
us about your approach to like just being you on the internet.
So I try not to overshare. So let's start there. But I don't know. I think there's value for me as well as for whoever tunes into me, understanding what the sort of mindset is behind a few of my choices, the things that I do. Strongman lifting is one of them, but also performance, right? So for me, it's not necessarily that I am like thinking about what am I going to share and what's my story going to be and how are my angles and all that sort of stuff. But I also have realized that if you share, people will listen and people will respond. And since we are sitting in our offices online, sure, but very isolated, it's just my home office. Now, again, my wife is sitting in front of me for most of the time, and not that alone, but you don't have any colleagues around you, right? If you want to have some sort of connection, and I appreciate connections, then you have to show that you're there, that you're available, that you have ideas and thoughts. And the more you share, the more feedback you get. And ultimately, that leads to growth. And I like growth. I think personal growth, whether that's done on the professional side of things or the strength side of things or the mental side of things, all of these things I put an effort in. I think they're important, and thus being online for me is essentially a method, a way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and since we're talking about the strength stuff, I'm similar in a way that I do a lot of hiking and running and getting out in nature, and it keeps
Yep.
me sane.
Oh,
And
for
when I
sure.
see somebody else like you who's like outside throwing really heavy things over these high bars, I know
Yep.
it helps keep you sane. But
Oh,
tell us about mental health and just the value of exercise and getting outdoors and how you balance life.
there's a saying where the outcome is the more healthy you are in your body, the more healthy you are in your mind. I think in Latin we say mens sana in corpore sana, something like that. But it's a symbiotic thing. So the more you are in fact living in your body, less in your mind, the more benefit you'll see in your mind, and vice versa. So it doesn't matter where you start, really. Because if you start educating yourself on exercise, you'll realize that is the one thing to do for longevity, for a better life, for quality, for better sleep, for all of these things. I discovered this decades ago because I can say that I'm past 50. One of the things I realized that like going beyond limits that I see or feel, and lifting heavy weights or carrying heavy weights or doing anything heavy for me is one of those things that absolutely forces me out of my mind because I can't be thinking about how many play. If you want me to see me at my dumbest, like my absolute dumbest, come join me in my strongman gym. I can't even count what plates I should put on. That's it's just too heavy. So I'll be slow in 1, 2, 3, 4 times 25 kilos is what now? That's 200. The bar is 200. So that's 220. Okay. So then I need two more. Like, I can't do that fast. Like I need to do one or the other. And the more I started doing that, the better I started feeling. So I was like, this is pretty straightforward. So why don't I invest in this? And as it so happens, I'm genetically predisposed to be stupid strong. They turned out to be very heavy in the end.
How many days do you work out or get exercise? For me, it's every day. It's all varied. Some days it's strength, running, fast, slow, hills, flat. But for me, I
I'll
have
walk
to do
every
it
day.
every yeah.
I'll walk every day. But working out, I have a minimum of 3 days a week, but ideally I'm four, maybe five. If it depends on a whole bunch of things. I have a home gym, so I have always room to do something. There's a gym at 2 kilometers, which is what, a mile and a half away. So I always have a way to do something. And I'm of the opinion that even if I am cramped for time, 20 minutes spent is 20 minutes well spent. So I'll prioritize that. I'll focus on that. And the easy part that comes with it is the more you keep doing it, the less it's about discipline. It's just habit. Because let me be very forward and straight on with this. It's not about motivation. It is about discipline. But if you do discipline often enough, it becomes just a habit. And I think that's the power of forcing yourself in your body, finding boundaries and going beyond them, finding ways. And obviously, I'm also hitting limits. There are certain things I can't weigh. I can't lift heavier than what I currently can, and I probably never will. That's also fine. I chose not to use any form of enhancement, so I am at my natural limits for some of the stuff that I do, but that's fine. I can play around with the thing, how I do it or how often I do it. But doing it means I feel better, period.
I know for while we're on this topic, for some people, maybe they've just haven't moved in a long time. They're pretty sedentary and they
Mhm.
kind of get the bug. And I know once you get into it, it becomes part of your life. That's the way I feel about it. But that period between making a change and installing that discipline and habit, what advice do you have to help people get over the initial resistance?
So, accept that you're going to be in discomfort for about 3 to 4 months. That's a given. That's a fact. So, your body just needs to understand pain, understands recovery, all of those things. And that's annoying, but it's how it works. So if you can mentally, on motivation or just sheer will, power yourself through the first 4 months, let's call it that, then the benefits start becoming quite real. And the rest is making sure you form a habit, logging, getting a buddy. There's different ways of using something that helps you keep momentum. So I would primarily focus on finding that thing that will motivate you. Some people will say lifting weights or fitness or whatever version you pick, it's boring. It's just doing the same thing over and over again. What I don't enjoy that. I don't think it's about the enjoyment of the exercise. I don't think it's about the reps you do. I don't think it's about any of this stuff. What it for me, what it's about is the result. So what does it give me? I'm close to 52 and I can sprint and run and do all the things of guys half my age. Now that's worth something to me. I saw a very interesting, I don't know, if it was an ad or just an interesting TikTok, but the gist of it was you say you die for your family, you do anything for your family, right? And then it showed some family pics, and then it said, but would you actually start investing time in feeling healthy and better? Because that is helping your family. Would you put the time in for that? And I was like, that's pretty much that sums it up. I'd like to have the highest quality of life, not just now, but for the next 50 years. So What's the best way to do that? In what modern science tells us, what the data tells us, that essentially means you need to be the strongest version you can be. And running is great, walking is great, but strength is where longevity lives. So I focus on strength.
Awesome. Speaking of consistency and discipline, what got you obsessed with WordPress and specifically performance and speeding up sites?
So the what got me into WordPress is basically I wanted to share some stuff that I was learning at the time, and I needed a platform, and I rolled into it. Quickly was asked for friends and family, can you build that for me? And that turned into a career. But the thing that pulled me into performance, I think I come from an enterprise background. Like I used to work at a large insurance company here in the Netherlands, and that gives you a different mindset. And with that mindset, I looked at WordPress and as well as the projects that I was doing. And I quickly rolled into sort of the more complicated types of sites. So when custom post types and custom taxonomies came around, that was heaven for me because now I can build anything on WordPress. And the first couple of sites that I've built had, some of them had 12, 13 custom post types and about double of that in custom taxonomies, and everything needed to work together. And I quickly learned that a lot of optimizations we've seen in the last 2, 3 years were not available then. So you needed to work in an optimized version. So the more data, the more complexity, the more limits you're hitting. So I was forced into looking what are ways that I can do this smarter, faster, from the ground up and not after the fact. Because building something and having it work, great. But as soon as 5, 6 people are on the site and it crashes, you go, that's not really motivating. So I started if being interested in the concept of if you want to solve a problem, you need to start at the root. And that brings you to interesting discoveries, not just in WordPress or performance, but in life, I'd say. But for WordPress, that meant I needed to figure out how to build smarter. And yeah, once you jump in that road, there's no way out of it anymore. There's just a smarter way to build.
So, what is Scan Fully and where did that come from and what does it do?
So Scanfully is a WordPress site health monitoring and performance monitoring tool. So our goal, and I'm doing this together with Barry Coy, who's also from the Netherlands, and the problem we want to solve is we want to be the tool that essentially monitors anything and everything that has to do with the performance and the health of your site. And so that's things like uptime and certificate monitoring. Sure, we pull in site health that is present in your WordPress site. We pull that into our dashboard so it's easier to access. Certainly, if you have a bunch of sites in there, it's just easier to navigate in our dashboard than it is to hop from 30 different WordPress sites, let alone hundreds. And the thing we'll be adding this year that's going to make the biggest impact is we're going to be monitoring for content health as well. And that's a very wide concept. So that basically means your broken links, your broken embeds, images, CSS files, JavaScripts, all the logical stuff. But we also include form validation, e-commerce optimization, and checking. Can somebody add to cart? Can they check out? And does everything work after an update? All of these things we're going to scan for quite regularly and fully.
Nice. You have a course coming too
Yep.
about performance.
Yep.
And I know you mentioned getting into the foundations and helping people understand it and all the layers.
Yep.
What are some of the the first three things people should look at with performance if they want I want my site to be faster? I
I
know
would
that's a hard question for an expert because you're like, it's a lot of things and it depends,
Yeah,
right?
but I'm going to cheat a little because I'm going to add step zero.
Okay.
So it's going to be four things. Step zero is building for performance, meaning you don't fix it at the end because caching is what most people think is the thing that solves performance or produces performance. But caching doesn't solve your performance. Caching makes an optimized version of your site. And the optimization can be that it is a static version of the site, meaning full HTML caching. You can move that to the Edge layer or many of the other solutions. but you still haven't solved performance. Because what does solving performance mean? That means there's a cache hit ratio of 100%. That's never going to happen. And in some cases, you may be lucky to get 50%. So, depending on your type of sites, especially when you're logged in, for instance, with an LMS or e commerce, you are by definition never looking at cache. You may have elements that are cached, for instance, your menu, but your site is uncached because if you are caching your site for a course, then whatever you just did, Chris, will be seen by the next person trying to log in, and they'll see your version of the course, which is obviously a no-no. Step zero means you starting building for performance. Now, I think the key there is depending on the type of site, you need to be on the right hosting. And there's a wide range of hosting plans out there for at different hosting companies. I'm not going to give you my preference here, but I am going to say there's ways of figuring out what hosting company has good and great performance. And spoiler alert, performance has nothing to do with support. You can have wonderful support, but a mediocre product, which is then looks like it's fantastic, not in the edge cases, not in really busy sites, which I'm sure you've seen happen with your product in many different ways. So that's step one. Your hosting needs to be perfect. Then step two means you need a theme that is a singular purposed theme, meaning a theme needs to have the base principle of wanting to do only one thing and do it well. That automatically means I don't like themes that want to be everything. A lot of the themes, for instance, on Theme Forest, that's never going to scale because there's no optimization happening in the entire code of that theme anywhere. And they just want to fix the output and cache, which again, back to step zero, that doesn't solve performance. And the third would be you have to have the desire to run a lean and mean site. You have to force yourself to be wary of everything you introduce to your site that potentially may slow it down. That doesn't mean you can't have 70 plugins. This may sound weird, but it's not about the plugin amount, it's about what they do. I have clients running sites in less than 500 milliseconds, cached and uncached, that are running more than 100 plugins. So the number of the plugins isn't the problem. What they do is the problem. So a plugin needs to be built in a fashion where it understands that if it's not supposed to do anything, certainly not on every page load, it's not doing anything. So lean and mean. And how can you stay lean and mean? Make sure you use a scanning tool that does it fully.
Awesome. Tell us, like, who's the perfect fit for Scan Fully, which is at scanfully.com, and who is a perfect fit for your upcoming course, and where can they find that or get on the email list to know what. This episode of LMS Cast is brought to you by Pop-Up Maker, the most powerful, trusted pop-up solution for WordPress. Whether you're selling online courses or memberships, Pop-Up Maker helps you grow your email list, boost sales conversions, and engage your visitors with highly customizable pop-ups. Imagine creating custom opt-ins, announcements, and promotions that actually convert. I personally use Pop-Up Maker on my LifterLMS websites for lead magnet opt-ins, cart abandonment, upsells, downsells, and guiding users to helpful content. Pop-Up Maker is an essential tool for growing my email list and making more money online through my website. Ready to take your website to the next level? Head on over to wppopupmaker.com/LMScast and save 15% on your order. Discount automatically applies when you visit through that link. Pop-Up Maker also has an awesome free version, so you can just use that as well. Go to wppopupmaker.com/LMScast and save 15% off your order, or get started with the free version now. Get more leads and sales on your website with Pop-Up Maker today. Now back to the episode when it comes out.
If you go to remkusdevries.com/courses, you can sign up for. I have a few courses listed, but my site's currently in rebuild, so I'll have a better landing page there. But there's a form there where you can sign up to be notified when the courses go live. But the ideal customer is essentially boils down to one or two words. That's a WordPress professional. And I know that's a vague word, but it essentially means anyone that wants to treat WordPress professional. So that's agencies, that's site owners that have sites that make money, where you rely on it working perfectly or understanding the principle. And the performance course probably is focused a little less on the beginner, but I am covering every single layer, explain to you what that layer is. So you have an understanding of what that layer actually in its full intent does. So that means I'll be throwing things at you like, this is your DNS layer, and this is what happens on the DNS layer. This is what your certificate does. And yes, there are a few cases where you get a wrong version of a certificate, your site will become slower. And this is why. So you are better equipped with the knowledge of making the right decisions, essentially. So I, probably less super beginner, anyone who regularly builds WordPress sites or works with them, they'll have a good understanding from both the course as well as using Scanfully. And I should mention the best features of Scanfully are up and coming for this year, but I urge you to get in now because the price is as low as it's ever going to be.
Yeah, I was looking at that and it's very reasonable. Speaking of WordPress professionals, one of the things creators, in my opinion, really need to do is build their audience, ideally in advance as soon as
Yep.
possible. The
Yep.
best day is 10 years ago, the next best is today.
Yep.
You started a newsletter, and like I mentioned, it's one of the few I follow. I just find it really value packed to the point, and
Thank you.
writing a newsletter, it really you're serving your community, you're also building an email list. I know you have, pretty high open rates on your newsletter, but what's the story of that? Why did you start it? And what would you advise somebody who hasn't built a newsletter for their community yet?
The answer to the second question, just start. Like,
Yeah.
don't wait it out. Don't think there will be a better time or I'm better well prepared. It's the same with kids. There is
Yeah.
never going to be a perfect time to have kids. Just have kids. If that's what you want, ultimately go for it. Same for the newsletter. Just make that choice of where to host it. And you can go fancy and go straight to Kit, but you can do Beehive, you can do Substack. It really doesn't matter. Just start. And in terms of the first answer, it's so I have the natural ability to process a lot of information and deduce from that what the thing is to remember here, whether that's a multitude of separate items or bringing back something complex to this is what it is about. And I started sharing this on and off over the last almost 4 years ago, 5 years ago now. And I enjoyed it, but I didn't have a routine in it, mostly because it was published on a site and I got less feedback. And at a certain point, I realized, oh, people actually like what I digest because it's essentially my digest of the week with a focus of performance, security, and just fun tools like stuff that you can build even cooler stuff on top of WordPress with. And I realized I should bring this to a newsletter. I did. And what I essentially do is share stuff I think is interesting or has a different angle from all the other newsletters you see out there. So I want to have a particular voice and I work at having that voice. Sometimes a newsletter has a few commentaries on my end, and sometimes I basically have something to say about every single item I add. I'll tell you why I'm adding it, or if I think it's a really good one, then I will say that. It's less of a, there's a few more newsletters out there that just share, they just post the links and send it out. And I'm less about that. I'm more about quality. And I made a decision to not share specific stuff related to community stuff or drama or any of that sort of stuff. There's others that do that wonderfully. I don't need to have that particular type of audience. I'd like to stay positive. I'd like to build stuff. I'd like to help people understand what they can do with the platform. That drives me, that motivates me, and I try to make that quite visible in my newsletter.
You mentioned you process a lot of information. I relate to that. I do that as well. I know there's like a strength and personality type tool. I can't remember which one, called Input, and you can take a lot of input of
Yep.
information.
I'm an
I
info
think
sorter is the best description that I've had thrown at me at one point.
that's awesome. I think a lot of course creators and kind of content people, but also a lot of people in the WordPress professionals, they take a lot of input. They're researching technology, they're talking to clients, they're just input people. Given all that input, what's your process from going from your research of listening to podcasts or RSS feeds or the newsletters you're subscribed to and blogs and stuff? How do you translate that volume of input into a newsletter format?
Diligently, because I have a few systems in place. So it depends on where I see the thing that I find interesting.
Yeah.
If it's shared on X or Blue Sky, I turn it into a bookmark. If it's a URL I see somewhere, I prepare all my newsletters in Obsidian. So I have a template that is my newsletter, and I essentially copy and paste all the things that I see as I see them. And on Friday I sit down and I take it's about an hour, and I process all the bookmarks, all the links that I had in a fashion that it is digestible for someone else as well. Oh, and obviously I'm subscribed to probably 50 plus newsletters, about 150 sites on RSS. And I've always done this. I've done this since 2007. So for me, it's just normal to check my systems for information and translate that, what I find interesting, into Obsidian. So I can then copy and paste it from Obsidian into Kit, and it's marked down in Obsidian, and Git, when I paste it, just accepts that. So it's very little work. It's basically just me processing the things that I've seen. And sometimes I add something during the week that on Friday go, yeah, never mind. And sometimes even on the Friday, I see stuff being talked about left and right and go, oh, interesting. I should add that quick. So yeah, it's a continuous process.
So it's really just you living your life, getting the information you want, and then about an
Yep.
hour on Friday, then you have a
Yep.
newsletter.
Yep.
And what about consistency? Do you ever feel like, oh gosh, I have to write the newsletter today, or it's become a labor of love, or you just enjoy it?
I enjoy it, but there's Fridays where it just doesn't work because so last Friday I was in Munich and I was busy all day. So that means no time for this. And I don't prepare them on like during the week. I don't prepare, write them. I process it on Friday. So I have my links, I have my bookmarks, but I'm not complete. The next morning, on the Saturday morning, I sent out the newsletter. So I'm okay with being flexible like that. And I'm also okay with skipping a week if it just doesn't work for whatever reason. And I have done that in the last couple of months, twice, I think. And it's just what it is. I'm human. I have things popping up on my priority list, and there's companies sponsoring me, and I let them know this is the schedule. And unless it's like super important, it goes absolutely out on this day because a campaign is related to it. I'm general as flexible as I can be. That said, for I don't know, the per year I miss maybe three, maybe four top. So it's more about I don't want it to be that I feel like I'm forced to do it. So that means I need to have that flexibility to let one go if need be.
So that's it, within WP.com. I highly recommend it. It's an awesome newsletter.
Thank you.
And you mentioned sponsorship. I think that's really cool for a course creator, as an example. Sometimes it takes time to build a course.
Yep.
And so if you're building your email list and maybe generating a little revenue through newsletter sponsorship, how do you get sponsors and what's your approach to that?
I don't approach it.
Okay.
It just
They
happens.
approach you. Yeah.
They approach me at a certain point. People started asking me, "Can you share some promotional stuff in your newsletter?" Yeah, sure. So I sat down and wrote out what I think I'm worth. That's not right. I think I'm worth more, but what the newsletter is worth,
Yeah.
and wrote out a sponsor within WordPress page. And if so, here's the deal: if I find something that is of commercial interest, but I find it interesting to share with my public, then I'll add you to it. If you ask me to share something, I will point you to the sponsor list. So that means sometimes something commercial is being shared and it's not sponsored, but that's my choice. If you ask me, then I choose to ask a compensation for it. Maybe a weird model, but that works in my head. That means I stay true to my integrity and don't muddy the water with half type of messages in here. You'll see me mention plenty of commercial solutions, and I'm okay with that. It's a little bit, it makes sense, right? So there's advertisers or sponsorships where I say no, this is no match for me. Yeah, but we really want to get in front. Yeah, I get it, but for me, no, it doesn't work. So I'm selective. I need to like the product. I need to like the people even. It's yeah, I'm weird like that.
I don't think that's weird. That sounds awesome. Going back to the personal side,
Hmm?
I've noticed on social media that you like to drive. So when you go
I do.
to conferences, as an example, I will watch you fly into a town and then drive across the country. I see you driving around Europe and going through border crossings. I see you, I think you did one with your son, uh,
Yep.
and you guys had an adventure. What's the pull of driving? And I relate to it because I always say, if I wasn't in tech, I'd probably be a long distance truck driver and just listen to podcasts all day.
I
But
yeah.
why do you like it?
I'm born and raised inside a family business that had anything from a gas station to a garage to a body shop, taxi company, car rentals. We did the whole thing. So from the age of 3, I know cars and I enjoy a car for what it is. Sure, transporting from A to B, but I also enjoy the beauty of the car and the I don't know, the freedom that comes with it. When it comes to road tripping, mm, so I like the idea of, so for instance, last, what was it, October, November, I drove to the Black Sea. And if you look up the Netherlands, the north of the Netherlands, and you look then at the Black Sea, you go, that's a ridiculous distance. Who does that? But I looked at it and went, that's a stupid thing to do. I should do that. And I enjoyed it. So driving all the way through Bulgaria, ending up at the Black Sea, that's the largest body of water that I've seen. I think no, maybe no, I no, possibly. Anyway, it's a stupid distance. So I was like, that's cool. Let's do that. And WordCamp Sofia was an option, and I applied to speak, and they said yes, good match for WordCamp Europe. The last 3 editions, I drove with my son, so he's on the photography team. So I drove to Porto with him. I drove to Athens, which was also a 3-day drive, and I drove to Torino, and we'll be driving to Basel in Switzerland in about 2 weeks. And for me, you can fly, sure, but I enjoy seeing the roads, the countryside, process the travel, and having the freedom to stop wherever I want. So especially in Switzerland, there's mountain passes, which I thoroughly enjoy. I'll drive around. It's not that I hate flying, but I just like driving more. When we met last at PressConf, I flew to Miami, got in the car in Miami, went to Key West first, and then back up all the way through New Orleans, up to Graceland, went down to Texas, saw Dallas, Dealey Plaza, drove down through New Mexico, saw the largest pistachio in the world. Super weird, but fun. Ended in Tombstone for a night and then drove up to Tempe, Arizona. And that was like 5 days. So it's long, but I also enjoy it. And I
That's
enjoy the
awesome.
alone time as much as I enjoy the driving with my son.
Awesome. Well, that makes sense. Being a strong man, working out, and also just getting out in the world, driving, going to conferences, and what keeps I think these are all important parts of mental health. So
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
totally get it.
The alone time forces you to. So I just got back this weekend from Munich, and it's a good day drive, and I can do those long hours driving. I think I'm used to it. That's one, but it's also fine if I drive for blocks of 3 4 hours. That works for me. But I enjoy the alone time. That's a dedicated time to think about things, and I don't have to force myself to think about it. But I know it's going to happen anyway. You can turn the music on, sure, that's going to make it even more pleasurable. But at some point, you start thinking about things, and it's a good way to process thoughts. I do that less in an airplane, for instance. That doesn't. I'm more like, that's a lot of noise around me. It's people way too close. If I can have the comforts of my own car, yes, please. If
That's
I could
awesome.
drive to the United States, I would.
Yeah. You might be able to if you go through
Bering Strait.
yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
I don't think
There's
that. Is there a bridge, or have they talked about a bridge? I think they've only talked about it.
as far as I know, there's just like a certain part of the winter, there's an ice road
Yeah,
that you
we're
can
not doing that.
cross.
When there is limits.
That's Remkus de Vries. You can find him at scanfully.com. Go check that out to speed up your website, monitor it, improve your performance. Also, the withinwp.com, the newsletter. Thanks for coming on the show, Remkus. Any final words for the WordPress professionals out there?
Final words. I don't know. Stay fresh. Start thinking about what your foundation of a fast and performant WordPress site should look like before you need to build it.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show, Remkus.
Happy to. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for this episode of LMS Cast. Did you enjoy that episode? Tell your friends and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And I've got a gift for you over at lifterlms.com/gift. Go to lifterlms.com/gift. Keep learning, keep taking action, and I'll see you in the next episode.